everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final workshop. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely, happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes, this is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew onto other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work, It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up, you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you're telling yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not qualified, I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's the story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life. Specifically, as you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip, and that was when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job. You get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part. Welcome to our workshop this evening. We're here to talk about how we can make the most out of our first job or internship after college. So we've been going through the semester so far. We've been meeting with our mentor. It's COVID. We're trying to figure out what the heck is our next step. And so if you're lucky enough to have an internship or a job, awesome, kudos. If you're still figuring that out, no worries. It's normal, especially when you're in such a not normal time period. It's normal to not have one. But if you do have one, we're going to talk about some steps that you can take to really make the most out of that first job or internship. And if you don't have one, you still can work towards getting one next semester. So it's totally okay. You're not too late. We've got an incredible guest this evening. We're here with Jeff Mcewen. So Jeff is awesome. Jeff is someone that I met through our executive mentor program. And as I learned more about Jeff, I realized he needed to be a speaker at our workshops so that the students could learn his insight. Jeff Mcewen is the Director of Training and Development for TruePay, and he's the co-founder and CEO of the Mcewen Group. Jeff has led and worked with teams in a variety of industries, from working in the U.S. Navy to being the sole HR practitioner of a 50-person machine shop to managing 2,500 employees in the healthcare industry. Jeff has done a lot in his work and in his time working, and I'm so grateful that he could be here as a guest for this workshop this evening. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Appreciate you inviting me, Garrett.
So, Jeff, I think before we get started, I'd love to learn about your early days of just transitioning from where you were in college to the career you're at today, and kind of how that all played out. I know you were in the Navy. I'd love if you could just share with us a little bit about your story, about how you got to where you're at now.
Sure. So, I had originally gone to college right out of high school, like so many people, and I really wasn't prepared, probably maturity-wise or in other ways, to do it. And so I majored in fraternity life, which was a lot of fun, but you don't get a grade for that, unfortunately. And I should have, because I did it well. And I don't mean I just drank a lot. I mean, I did fraternity well. I was a philanthropy chairman. I was president of my pledge class. I served on boards and committees. So I really was getting the good stuff out of fraternity life in the Greek system. And I really did learn a lot of valuable lessons about organizational structure and leadership and stuff like that. So I think it's a shame that sometimes you don't get a grade for some of those things, because it was more important than what I was learning in English class or Arabic that I didn't do so well in. But I ended up leaving school and went into the Navy. And that helped me kind of put my priorities in place and get structure in my life. And when I went in, I said, hey, I want to do something that's got civilian applications. And so I looked at a couple different things, and I ended up choosing finance, and I did payroll in the Navy. So when I got out, I went back to school and I studied accounting, got my accounting degree. I had an internship like some of the people on your podcast, and that ended up leading to my first job. And so there were some good lessons for me in there. But accounting really didn't turn out to be a great fit for me. So I had an opportunity that came really just as a blessing to get into human resources. And that was a much better fit. And I loved HR, and I've been in HR or training, which is sort of a division of HR, ever since.
That's awesome. I love your vulnerability. And all the students know my story of being a drug dealer and getting caught, and kind of my, come back and bounce back story. So one, I appreciate you being vulnerable. And two, I love what you said about thinking you wanted to be in finance and then transitioning into HR, because I think what's so cool about that is it shows the flexibility of you and your career. What you determine right now, students, does not have to be what you do for forever. And that's okay. And that's totally fine. And careers and paths aren't linear, as kind of Jeff has described. It went in one way, and then went in a different way, and then went in another way, and it went in a different way. And that's normal, and it's okay. So I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is, don't take yourself so seriously. If things change, they change. And you just have to be able to roll with the punches and handle it. I know that a lot of people had to go through a lot of changes because of COVID, whether that means they were forced out because of layoffs or furloughs, or the industry they were in just became obsolete, or because they realized they weren't interested in it anymore. And so I just think that there's a lot of value in pivoting and being able to expand your mind to a different area that you never thought would be your ultimate spot. So, Jeff, with that said, I'd love to learn your thoughts. What can a student do right now to help prepare themselves for that first job or internship?
Well, I think you hit on a key piece, which is don't paint yourself in a corner. Don't put yourself in a box. You're going to need to be flexible. Right now, employers are trying to get the absolute most that they can out of people, whether that means longer hours. I see a lot of that happening, or whether that means putting on lots of different hats. So yeah, I think just being prepared for that is a big part of that. So as I was thinking about what we're going to talk about today, I kind of broke it down into two components, and I guess you tell me if you want me to just run through all this or if you want to address this individually. But I kind of have, what do I think you should do before day one, and what do I think you should do after day one?
I love that. Let's just have a brief conversation. Let's start with before day one, and then we'll work into, and if there's any cool points, I'll just jump in and be like, oh, that's fascinating. Nugget of wisdom, students, take it down. And then after day one, we'll do the same thing. Sound good?
All right. So one of the things that I really didn't do, and I should have done, and I've done this in jobs since, and it certainly served me well. And I've really only ever seen one young person coming into the position who did this, and it was good for them to do that as well. And that was, you're going to go work for this company, whether it's an internship or job, you're going to go work for that company. And hopefully I don't have to tell you to do some research and know the company and know some things about them. But you need to look beyond that. What's their industry like? Who are the major players and competitors? Are they owned by a parent company, or do they have subsidiaries? And have an idea what the current state of that industry is. Just a simple. We didn't have Google when I was coming out. You had to really dig into some Hoovers and all these old things you had to subscribe to get information on businesses. Man, with Google right now, just take advantage of the opportunity to find out what regulations or regulatory issues are facing the industry. You can get all this in 30 seconds. I'm not talking about spending a week to do this. You can take an afternoon or a couple, hours in the week and get this information, and it's just going to make you so much more, not really valuable, because I'm not talking about having the knowledge, not studying the industry, but have enough of an understanding that if you either hear people talking about XYZ company, that you're aware of the relationships, right? That you're not, saying, oh, I love their stuff, and you find out it's a major competitor, that nobody talks good about or something, or you wouldn't want to go in and say, oh, I hate this company's thing, and then you find out that they're sister companies under the same holding company or whatever. So just be smart, know a little bit about the relationships within the company and that kind of thing.
I love
before
that.
you get in there.
I'll jump in there real quick because I think it makes me think of a story that will always be like seared in my mind. I have a mentor, and he's in sales, and one of the things that he did early on was he was selling a product to Pepsi. So he goes into Pepsi. He was picking up lunch. He's providing lunch to everybody. He goes in, and one of the funniest things, he pulls out the drinks for lunch, and guess what he pulls out?
Coke.
That's exactly what he pulled out. But it was so funny because they were so not expecting that. It actually totally was a priming shift, and he was suave enough to be able to land the deal. But I mean, yeah, I think that's a funny story that makes me think of that. But the other big thing, even on a deeper level, what you're saying of knowing your industry is, if I'm hearing you right, it almost sounds like what you're saying is be entrepreneurial about your career path. Like, is this industry going in a direction that you want to be going? And if not, maybe you should have second guesses about whether or not this is where you want to go. I think so often we think, like, take the job because it's there and available. And I think what you're almost saying is like, whoa, take a rewind real quick and see, is this industry going in a direction that you would like to be going? And if not, maybe choose a different industry. Or if it's not going into a certain industry, or in an industry you think is fast growing, is there a function that you can pursue that you believe is going to be very accelerated and going to allow you to build a skill set that can apply to other industries? Is that correct?
Well, that's a great point, and I like the way you put that. That wasn't quite what I was thinking, but certainly I would hope that, again, that would have happened before now, right? You wouldn't have picked an industry where the whole industry was something that you were moving away from. But you should definitely have a comfort level, right? You're going to tell people this is where you work. You don't want to have to then backtrack and tell everybody, oh, but it's okay. They're cool, or they're not this or that. So you do want to know some of those kinds of things. But I just was really referring more to, and again, this goes to what you and I've talked about already with the flexibility. Whatever this first job is, or this first internship, it's not like you're going to be stuck here for 20 years. So I would say whatever it is, whatever you're getting into, you're going to be able to learn something valuable from it. Ironically, the reason I took the HR job, like I say, I was coming up in a finance path. I happened to have a good friend of mine whose dad was the head of, he was not head, the head finance, he was CFO for what later became OnStar. It was a division of General Motors, and I think it's still out there. I don't see their commercials as often, but they were kind of the original press the button in your car and get help kind of thing. And I asked him, I said, hey, I've got this opportunity to get into human resources, but I'm on this finance path. What do you think? And he's like, absolutely. Too many people in finance and accounting don't understand the HR side. They write these checks, they pay for wages, they pay for benefits, they pay for all these HR-related things, and they don't understand really their value, they don't understand how they work. So his advice wasn't to make a career switch. It was go over there for a while, do a year, do 5, whatever, learn that side. And then when you come back, you'll be a better, more well-rounded finance professional. Now I ended up staying. It was a better fit for me. So, as I'm talking about here about know the regulations, the industry, and the relationships, maybe it's not. Maybe you might even know, if you're bold enough to do this, this is not an industry I want to do something with. Maybe I'm almost even interested in the counter, but by going into this, I can learn a lot. I can learn about the ins and the outs and how this works, and then that'll help me in the next thing I want to do to have a better understanding. So, but I think you make a great point. If you're going to have to be comfortable, especially if you think this is going to last for a little while.
Definitely. So what are some other
Yeah.
things that students can do to prepare for that first job or internship?
So if you can do this, and again, with the internet today, this is so much easier to do, get an org chart or go to LinkedIn and use the org chart and figure out the relationships. And especially with LinkedIn, look at pictures. Get to know people. You don't want to be walking down the hallway and run into somebody literally, or bump into them coming in and out of the restroom or going to the water fountain, and then you find out it's the president or it's the CEO or it's somebody else. You want to make sure that you can recognize some of the key players in the company. So use those opportunities to do that online, do that research, and find out who these people are.
I would take that even a step further, of challenging students to not only know who the presidents and the key players are, but use your status as a new person to introduce yourself. See, we think like, oh, well, we're the new person, they're not going to care about me. And that's 100% not the case. They absolutely care about anybody they bring on. The human component, the human resources on your team are the most invaluable resources to any company. It can't be done without people. And so at the end of the day, as a new person, justify that as your reason for getting your foot in the door and introducing yourself, making yourself known, because ultimately that could be an avenue for leading to future opportunities. You never really know.
Yeah. Well, you're stealing my thunder here. You're getting ahead of me, because now you're talking about after day one. You're talking about after you're in the building, right? So, and that's the first point I've got up next, which is these were all things prior to getting in the building. Now, once you're in the door, you're exactly right. You've got my next item up, which is to be cognizant of building relationships. And I had written down network. I really don't even want to use that word. It's a little overused, and I feel like it's almost taking on a salesy kind of it's used so much anymore. So just build relationships, talk to people, get to know people. And that means knowing ahead of time some of the things, to your point, right, about the CEO, the CFO, whatever. But if you find out that they've got some major philanthropy that they support, or they've got some thing that their spouse is involved with, or kids are at schools or whatever, those can be great ways for you to open doors. One of the places I worked, actually just before I came to TruePay, I discovered that our CEO had some ties to Yale, and he really didn't talk much about it. We were an Indiana company. He talked a lot more about his bachelor's from Ball State. He had lots of Ball State stuff, and so we all knew he was a Ball State person. But I happened to catch that he had some connections to Yale, and I was coaching the Notre Dame squash team at the time, and we would travel out east for tournaments a lot and a couple times at Yale. And so I happened to then, as we're in conversation on something else or whatever, and it kind of got relaxed and casual, and just said that I was going to be out at Yale and I was coming up, and I thought that I'd heard he had some connections, and did he have any recommendations for something to view or whatever. And my gosh, it just opened up a whole nother opportunity for us to talk and share, and oh yeah, look at this and that and the other. And when I came back, we talked some more about it. So just little things like that you just don't know what might open an opportunity. But you do have to play that carefully and let that be natural. Just, hey, this is what's going on. Again, don't manipulate it. Don't try to leverage it. That was a lesson I learned the hard way at my first job. After that internship led to a permanent position, I was working, I guess I'll share this. It doesn't really matter, but maybe it's relevant for somebody watching. I had graduated from Purdue, and I was in Lafayette working for Kirby Risk, a large electrical supply company. And I worked at their wire harness shop right behind Caterpillar. They have a large Caterpillar plant in Lafayette, and this particular location, we made wiring harnesses for their plant, and it was all just-in-time production. And I had gotten to know the Caterpillar plant manager 2 or 3 weeks earlier at a symphony event. So we both happened to be there. We happened to be at the bar, and I recognized him and introduced myself. So I'm nobody. I'm this new guy at a partner company, and he's the CEO of this plant. But because we talked for 30 seconds or something, apparently I thought that now I had this relationship with him. Well, I screwed up a wire harness that was supposed to go. I was overseeing a project, screwed it up, caused some problems at Caterpillar. And so I'm in the restroom, and our CEO comes in, or our plant manager, and he very graciously, he just says, "Oh, heard you had kind of a rocky day today." And at first I was like, "Oh, well, what do you mean?" Not thinking that he's already referring to what I've done with this wire harness. And he said, "Well, I heard you had a harness that didn't make it over there in time." "Oh, yeah, yeah." And then just stupid, dumb, young, didn't have all my crap together. And I said, "Yeah, well, I know Sid, the plant manager. I'll buy him a beer at the next symphony event. We'll make it all better." And I don't even know now if I thought I was being funny or cute or whatever, but not the right thing to say, not the right timing. And as a result, I was asked not to come back to that plant. Had to move on to another role. So do be careful. Sometimes you feel like you've got relationships that you don't have, or you have overconfidence instead of just modest confidence. So that was my second point on here, was just be confident but not cocky. Make sure that people know that you are competent and confident, but those need to have some limits.
That's an incredible story. I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, because I think that is, it's so funny. I mean, you see these books of like, if you just work hard, you'll make it. And I just find those to be quite hilarious because they're very not helpful. It's the learning the stories of people when they fall on their faces. That is where you realize, one, I'm not the only person. And two, you're like, okay, cool. Like I could see how I could have easily been in that scenario, and thought to myself, naturally, we saw each other at the symphony. I'll mention this, and it'll make things okay. And it, yeah, I could see that. And from that kind of, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and here's the second piece that related to what you said about, people, afraid that they're going to make mistakes. You know what? It didn't cost me my job. I mean, that's the thing. I'm young. I'm right out of college. People much wiser and older than me run these businesses. I don't want to say it was expected, but it was like, you know what? This is a lesson Jeff's never going to forget. And so when I went back, I had a letter from Jim Risk saying, "Hey, sorry that didn't work out. Sorry that, those things happened. What else would you like to do here?" I mean, I was blown away. I just thought, oh, wow. When I heard the plant manager is like, "I don't want you back in my building," I'm done. And that's the other thing. You're right. I mean, that these things aren't life-ending. Usually, right? Especially if we're not talking about something illegal or crazy. If you just made a mistake, even a big mistake like that. I mean, I shut down the Caterpillar plant for about 10 minutes. I don't know what that ended up costing us, but it wasn't cheap, I'm sure. But the owners were able to say, "You know what? It's a valuable lesson. You've learned it. You're probably never going to make that mistake again. So now we've got it behind us. How can we move forward?" So that's the thing that I had next is, don't be afraid of these mistakes. It's very, very rare that a mistake by a new person or somebody who's relatively new to the position, and that doesn't even necessarily mean young people. I mean, maybe if you're midlife and you've gone back to school and you're getting ready to get into this new career, people understand. People know that you're new into the role, new into the company. And generally people, I find, are more forgiving than not. So, if you can eat that humble pie and say, "Yep, it was my mistake and I screwed it up," especially. I mean, I didn't even do that, and I still got saved. So yeah, if you can do that, you'll be in great shape.
I love that you showed both sides of the story, because I think that it's really huge. And I think there are like a lot of things that I can pull from that. I think one, on the side of it not working out with Curb Your Risk, or rather we're just being transitioned to a new plant. What my observation was, maybe you were a little more casual about a mistake that really was a big deal, but because you were so new, you didn't realize how big of a deal it was. And so by, saying, "I'll buy him a beer at the next symphony," it almost kind of like swept it under the rug. And I would imagine the plant manager wanted you to take it a little more seriously, which is, I think, the moral I'm taking from that is, when it comes to mistakes, using your bridge to kind of using a mutual bridge like the symphony to try to kind of override that mistake is probably not a great lesson. It's you almost like being transactional with this point of connection that you have together. But on the flip side, when you talked about the squash league that you were, or the squash coaching team that you were coaching at Notre Dame, and the ties to Yale, that's at a juncture, what I observed was it was inconsequential in the sense that you had made a mistake. It was just a point of conversation. And when there are things that are almost inconsequential, the more bridges you have between people, the more people are likely to enjoy being around your company and liking you.
So true.
So
true.
I think that's a really great point. Don't be casual about your bridges when you've made a mistake. But when you haven't made a mistake, yeah, you know what? Leverage those bridges, because people like those that are like them. Relatable experiences are so powerful.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true. We're drawn to people like ourselves for the most part. Yep. And that kind of ties into my next one, which is, as a part of these relationship buildings, build relationships outside of your department. Most places are going to have committees, whether that's the party committee or the welfare committee or something. There are going to be opportunities for you to volunteer or serve on committees, serve with other people. So network out, and again, I'm going to use that word network, but don't build relationships outside of your department. Get to know some of these other people. If we keep hearing these numbers about the average length of time you're going to spend on the job is 2 or 3 years or whatever it is, well, that's not just true for you, that's true for your coworkers. So you may be in accounting, but that IT person that you get to know may move on to the next thing, and while they're there, they find out that there's a need for an accounting person, and they think of you. Or you might be in production or operations, and you get to know that person in HR, or even the front desk person. Just build those networks, build those relationships. They're going to help you in your position, and then they may even help you with your next position.
Yeah.
In addition to that, networks. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, it makes me think of a question that I'd love to ask the students real quick. Post in the comment section. This is a two-part question. One, what is the function within the company that you would like to be in? So do you want to be in accounting or finance or marketing or engineering? What function of the company do you want to be in? But with that said, the second part of this question is, what other function within the business are you genuinely interested in building relationships with? So let's say if you want to be an engineer, maybe say, I'd also love to learn about the accounting side. I'd love to build relationships with them. I think by setting that intention, that'd be great. So post that in the comment section. I'd love to learn, what is the function you'd like to do within the first job or internship that you have? And then what are other functions and other people and other functions that you would like to learn from?
That's great. Great point. And that works both ways. So you might, let's say you're in the engineering you talked about, and you get to know somebody in finance. I can't give you a personal story about this from civilian life, but in the military, where you really do kind of just focus in your particular area, it was not totally uncommon to have people come and ask each other questions, because we would, for example, I did finance, like I say, I was in dispersing, and I was on a ship. And so in my space, in my ship, I had, all these components. I had water tubes and fuel lines and electrical stuff, whatever. And I was responsible for what they call preventive maintenance in there. You had to do the PM work. And there were times that there were things I was supposed to do. I was like, I have no idea. But I had friends that were in what called the hull tech, the HT department, the guys that did all that maintenance stuff. And I was able to go down and say, hey, look, can you help walk me through, what is this talking about? Or what does this mean? Or how do I do this? And then flip side of that, I'd have people come to me and say, hey, on my last pay statement, I'm noticing that these things are happening. Can you, help explain those kinds of things? So I'm sure in the civilian world, same thing would happen. You're in engineering, accounting's got some kind of bill coming through. If they've got those relationships with you, it's so much easier for them to feel comfortable to come and say, can you help us understand this or explain that? It's a totally different thing than if you have to go to somebody that's just a professional relationship and you don't have that connection with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Jeff, I know you've been in your field for quite a while, but what motivates you to keep wanting to learn more?
Well, you have to. I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think if I could, off the top of my head, think of a field where you wouldn't have to really keep learning. It's constantly changing. So in HR, the world of legal compliance is always changing. There's always a new state passing a law. There's a new federal regulation coming down. And so whether that's, the latest stuff with the FFRCA or whatever related to COVID, so you've got to stay on top of it. You've got to know the latest thing. What I think is challenging when I first got into this, and actually let me tie this to my next point. My next point was, don't just network within the company, but network in your field. So nearly every field any of these students are going to be involved in, there's going to be some kind of professional organization. For HR, it's SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management. In payroll and finance, there's the American Payroll Association. There's CPA organizations. Get involved in those too. I feel like sometimes people I've talked to have said, well, I've got to be well established in my field before I do that. No, if you're brand new out of school, get into those things right away. They've got amazing resources to keep you in the know on the latest information and to keep you up to speed. And again, you're going to meet people, and those people know people. And so it's going to just grow that whole network and those relationships. So get involved there.
That makes me think of a question real quick.
Yeah,
I'd love to ask the students. What is an association in your field that you'd like to learn more about or potentially join? I know that you're still a student, I know that you're just jumping into your career, but I'd love to ask you this question. Post in the comment section, what is an association that you've either already joined or would like to join once you get into your field that you'd like to, I guess, get more involved with?
Yeah, and many times, is if you're still a still a student, is there are student chapters. So there are a lot of SHRM student chapters and things like that. So even on your campus, you can be getting involved already in those. But certainly once you're off campus and out in the world, and most of them have discounted rates. So if you're just a recent graduate, you can usually get in for cheaper. So that's nice too. But use those relationships and use those opportunities to grow. So if you get certified, so you were saying what motivates you to keep learning. If you get certified in your field, most certifications have a continuing education requirement. So be aware of that if you didn't already know that. If you thought once you graduated, you were done learning. For example, with SHRM, I want to say it's 60 hours every 3 years, something like that I have to earn. So you do have to continue taking continuing ed credits and learning about what's going on. But what I was going to say a minute ago about that's interesting is, well, if you attend conferences within your area of expertise, you're going to hear a lot of speakers who will come and present information that's either theory or their suggestion or their prediction of what the future is going to look like. And I know when I was young, I ate those up like they were fact, like they were right now. And then I would go back to my place of business and share those, and people would go, well, that's not happening yet or whatever. And then I'd realize, oh yeah, this was proposed. So I would just say, be aware of that. Be aware as you learn things or read things in magazines about your industry, whatever. Make sure you know what is and what might be, and keep those both straight.
I like that. But speaking of which, I think that's a cool thing to think about. I don't know if many students think about it like this, so I'd love to ask them, where do you think the future of your industry is going? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn, what do you think is going to happen for the future of whatever industry you're pursuing or whatever field or function you're pursuing? I'd love to learn what you're thinking about, because I think if you're aware of it, you could kind of prepare for the future. And obviously it may not work out the way you expect it, but if you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants and you're like, I got a job offer, yay, and then I'm working in this role, and then yay, and then all of a sudden, like, my function has completely been written off the business, then you're like, oh, not yay, I'm trying to figure out what the heck do I do now. So I think thinking about the future of where you think your field or industry is going, I think is critical, because you want to position yourself to constantly ahead of the curve.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and if I knew how to make memes or something, there's probably a great meme in this. But that the stereotype that has been pushed around for about a while, for about millennials and some of the generations, is that they're all living at home in mom and dad's basement, and that was such a negative thing, right? It was put out there as a negative thing. Well, now we have COVID, where everyone has to work from home, and we're all working in our basements in our pajamas. So I'm sure there's a great lesson somewhere in there that all they were doing was preparing. Somehow, subconsciously, they knew that this was coming. So, but yeah, it's amazing when you think about the change. I mean, just 6 months ago, there's no way that in HR conferences I would have been going, people would have been talking about work from home like we are. It was something that occasionally happened, and you had some people that did it, and certain industries were better at than others. And now that's all anybody can talk about is employees working from home, and what are the risks and what are the hazards and what do you need to think about and how do you take care of work comp? Just all these kinds of things. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that I would imagine you have to go through as someone who's in HR around that space, because there's a lot of things changing and happening. What other tips do you have for students either to prepare themselves for that first job or internship, or once they've started it?
So after day one, once you're in there and you're on your way, there's a phrase you want to make sure that you really avoid. That's not my job. So we talked about that at the top of this, that everything is your job anymore, right? There's a line, you will discover human resource. People love to put this on the end of your job description. So look all the way down, the very last line, it's going to say other duties as assigned. And that basically means it's your job. No matter what it is they need you to do, it's your job. So yeah, don't do that. And not just because it's negative, and not just because it kind of paints you in a bad light, but you want to do various things. You want to try and broaden your experience. When you apply for a job later, now when you come out of school, most of us who do recruiting, we're not looking for any great impressive thing on your resume. If you've got it, wonderful. If you did some kind of a trip with a college program and you guys saved a village in the jungles of Central America or whatever, awesome, put it on there. But mostly we're looking for potential. What do we think this person has the potential to do some great things? But down the road, you're going to be applying for jobs and filling out resumes, and people are going to want to see production. They're going to want to see results. So that's what you're looking for. In this first job, you want to try and volunteer for projects or let people add you to teams so that you can list, I was part of the team. Now, again, maybe your part was you just took notes. It doesn't matter. I was part of a team that revamped our engineering department and saved $3.5 billion internationally. That's huge. If you can put that on there, that you had some exposure. And again, even if all you did was simply take notes or sit on the sidelines, you still observed the process. You still observed the things that people went through. So if someone were looking to hire a person that had an idea, what does it take to overhaul an engineering program? Not that you could lead it, but you've got some idea of what it looks like and how it works. So those are the things you're trying to do. Find ways to get your fingers in to these different pies and get involved with things that you can then speak to later. And log them, journal them, create some kind of document where you're capturing, this is what I've worked on. These were, and be specific, get measurables. These were the dollars we saved. This was the time we cut out of the process. These were the number of people that we trained. Whatever it is that you were doing, get those metrics and be able to talk about those things. And even if you didn't lead it, that's okay. You had exposure to it. You were part of it. And the more that you did have responsibility on leading or making decisions, then great. Be sure to talk about those. But as a first-time new person in a job or an internship, just get in there. Get into every door you can walk through.
That's awesome. That is really valuable advice. That's really great insight. I'm just thinking about it right now, creating a log of every great accomplishment you've made. It may seem
and failure.
And failure. People want to learn that vulnerability.
And failure.
I think, I'm glad that you said that, because I was just thinking about this. Like, if I'm reviewing resumes and all I'm seeing is like all these amazing accolades and there's no issues with anything, you start to question. You're like, okay, where's the big reveal? What am I about to find out? And so I think if you could be transparent about the mistakes that you've made, it builds trust. You're like, oh wow, this person was very upfront and open about where this didn't work and where they, didn't hit their mark. And that shows a whole lot about your character, a whole lot more about your character than all the accolades.
Yeah. And the other thing I see too, and I was guilty of this myself when I was younger, to your point about be vulnerable and share. If you do, and we're talking really more here, interview versus resume. But if you don't do that, like you said, if everything seems to be coming up roses, then what that really tells me is two things. Either you're not really honest, there's things that you're not wanting to share, or you are due for a massive failure. You are well past your due date for smaller ones. So that's the other thing I like to hear is most people do learn from mistakes. So if you can tell me that you've had a couple, even big ones, even ones that maybe cost you a job, whatever, those are things that I know those are lessons you've learned and you're probably not likely to make if I hire you. So yeah, so you're right. Be vulnerable, be open to those things, and then but tell me how you learned from it, right? Don't just tell me, well, I screwed up the wire harness at this place, and those jerks, they just didn't understand, and they treated me crappy or whatever. Tell me I made the mistake. Here's what I did wrong. I learned that from now on I need to make sure I double check things or whatever. That's going to do so much more for you than if you say, oh yeah, I've never made a mistake. Everything's always gone swimmingly.
You know what? It's funny you say that. I know when I speak with, even like on business and like sales conversations, I will frequently tell my story of being a drug dealer. And I know some people in the audience might be watching this be like, what? You do what during your sales conversations? And I find that by sharing my past and my mistakes, I become so much more real to them. I become so much more trustworthy because they're like, wow, this guy's not hiding anything from me. He's very open about, how and why he does his work. There's no like curtain that we have to pull back. It's right here. And I find it to be really effective. And I think if you're a student, you're thinking to yourself like, oh, I'm not in sales. If you're interviewing for a job, you're in sales because you're selling yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So no, these are really great points, Jeff. Any other final points that you want to leave with our students during this workshop?
Well, those were all the things I thought of. I guess the other thing would just be, enjoy it. I have met some people whose personality just lends themselves to be a little overly anxious or worried or what have you. And there's natural stress that's going to come with being new to a job or new to a career. That's going to be natural. Don't make it worse. Find ways to lighten up, have fun. Enjoy what you're doing. Again, like I say, if you can get involved with committees, that's sometimes a great way to be at work, but be able to relax a little bit more, have some lighter fun. Yeah, I mean, it's not usually, right? Some people find what they love right out of the gate and that's it. They never look back, but usually this is just a stepping stone for that next thing. So
this is great insight, Jeff. I really appreciate you being here. This was excellent. Final question for you. How can our audience learn more about you? How can they connect with you? How can they ask you questions or follow up if they've got questions?
Yeah, you bet. Well, you mentioned the Mcewen Group. That might be the best way. If you just go to or Google the Mcewen Group or the mcewengroup.org, you can get on, or .com. You can get on there and see our stuff and reach to me that way. I'm also, every now and then I Google myself. I think everybody should do that periodically just to know what's out there. So if you Google me, I think I'm the only person whose name is spelled the way I spell it. It's Jeff with a G, Geoff, the old English spelling, and then Mcewen, Mccuen. So you can find me there. I'm involved with Association for Talent Development and SHRM, so I've got some links out there related to that as well. So I'm easy to find.
And you're very active on LinkedIn. All of our students are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, love LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. This was an awesome workshop. Students, thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your semester, and I look forward to seeing you next semester. Thank you all.
Good luck. Thanks. Bye.